Distinctive features of Carnatic music, Part 10. Insignificance of notation during performance. Notation is called Sangeeta Lipi in Sanskrit. It is the method by which various details of the song are presented on paper. Orally perceived music is presented on sheets with the use of ancient or modern musical symbols. In other words, it is a mode of representing music to the eye. When music that is sung or played is translated into a visible form, it is called notation. For this purpose, many signs and symbols have been devised, and we are now in a position to represent in notation almost all the aspects of music. The signs and symbols used for notation writing differ with the various musical systems. Carnatic music is taught by demonstration and learnt by the ear since early times. There was a need for written forms of music during ancient days. Paper notations using solfa syllables came later, before which the songs were written on palm scriptures. The name of tunes was mentioned on these scriptures. The sahitya of the songs were written down and the music was committed to memory. This was compiled by the disciples of a particular composer to preserve his compositions for future references. Even then, the composition of the composers was not felt in the correct notation. However, this circumstance is responsible for the loss of the original music to some extent of such priceless gems as the Ashtapadis of Jayadeva and to some extent the Tevaram and Tiruvachakam of the Tamil Shaivite saints. The Oduvar tradition in the sphere of Tevaram music is another example of orally transmitted art in which the original tunes are not preserved. The original tunes of Divya Prabandham are also lost due to the absence of notation writing. Contrary to what many people think, notation is not a new concept to Indian music. In fact, even the Vedas, though orally transmitted, were written with notation. The ancient book Sangeeta Ratnakara by Saranga Deva had swara notations. He uses the dot, short and long letters to indicate 1 unit and 2 units, etc. Hence, there is evidence to prove that even during the medieval period, the habit of writing notation for compositions existed. But this habit was not followed by all. The idea of notation was not well received and it continued to be orally transmitted for many centuries. The disadvantage with this system was that if one wanted to learn a composition composed by, say for example, Purandara Dasa, it involved the difficult task of finding a person from Purandara Dasa's lineage of students, if such a person still existed. Written notation of Carnatic music was received in the late 17th and 18th century, which coincided with the rule of Shahaji II in Tanjavur. Copies of Shahaji's musical manuscripts are still available in the Saraswati Mahal Library in Tanjavur. They give us an idea of the musical form. They contain snippets of solfege to be used when performing the mentioned raga. The South Indian music possesses a highly developed scientific system of writing down what is sung or played. This type of writing down what is rendered is termed as musicography by Professor Sambamurthy. Unlike classical Western music, Carnatic music is notated almost exclusively in tonic solfa notation using either a Roman or Indic script to represent the solfa names. Past attempts to use the staff notation have mostly failed. Indian music makes use of hundreds of ragas, many more than the church modes in Western music. It becomes difficult to write Carnatic music using the staff notation without the use of too many accidentals. Furthermore, the staff notation requires that the song be played in a certain key. The notions of key and absolute pitch are deeply rooted in Western music, whereas the Carnatic notation does not specify the key and prefers to use scale degrees or relative pitch to denote notes. The singer is free to choose the actual pitch of the tonic note. In the more precise forms of Carnatic notation, there are symbols placed above the notes indicating how the notes should be played or sung. However, informally this practice is not followed. To show the length of a note, several devices are used. If the duration of note is to be doubled, the letter is either capitalized or lengthened by a diacritic. For duration of 3, the letter is capitalized and followed by a comma. For a length of 4, the letter is capitalized and then followed by a semicolon. In this way, any duration can be indicated using a series of semicolons and commas. However, a simpler notation has evolved which does not use semicolons and capitalization but rather indicates all extensions of notes using a corresponding number of commas. Thus, sa, quadrupled in length, would be denoted as S followed by 3 commas. The notation is divided into columns depending on the structure of the talam. The division between a lagu and a dhrutam is indicated by a called a danda, and so is the division between two dhrutam or a dhrutam and an anudhrutam. The end of a cycle is marked by a called a double danda. Significance of notation. Notations in Carnatic music are important to keep record of the compositions that are learnt. It is the most effective means to preserve the musical compositions composed by our Vagyakaras to posterity. Human memory is subjected to forgetfulness. Since the compositions of Carnatic music is vast, it's impossible to keep in mind all of them. By glancing at the notation, we can recollect a forgotten composition. Notations are being used in Carnatic music from the beginner's lesson. It helps the students to gain knowledge about the placement of the swaras in a tala, the parts of the tala, the order of the sangadis, and the tune of the song, etc. With the help of the notations, an experienced musician can sing a song that is not familiar to him. The practice of singing swara passages written in notation enables a student of music to improve his swarajnana. In instrumental ensemble, notations are used throughout the concert to bring out coordination and also to maintain the plan of the concert. Notations are also significant for a student to know the swara phrases of a raga. It gives the skeleton of a composition with in-depth detailing. It helps us to analyze the style and the creativity of a composer. Notation writing is a skill by itself. It can be attained only after attaining adequate proficiency in music. Insignificance of notation in concerts. Notations are less frequently used in vocal concerts. The compositions are memorized well before the concert. The microtones, quarter-tones, and the subtle nuances of Carnatic music are perceived only if a student learns directly from a guru. In Indian music, an artist has to render a song only from memory, unlike a musician of Western music who looks into notation while performing. In Kalpita Sangeetam, the notations can be framed for all the compositions, whereas Manodharma Sangeetam does not permit notations. The rendition of Manodharma aspects such as Alapana, Nirabal, Kalpana Swara, etc. should be purely extempore. These should not be memorized or written on sheets and rendered. Hence, notation loses its importance in Carnatic concerts, which is purely extempore. Insignificance of notation for beginners of music. Notation will not be of much use to a beginner who has just started his musical training. Initial music training is fully based on oral means. The student listens and learns from the guru. Once sufficient knowledge in music is acquired, notations will be useful to present the composition with the bhava implied on the song. Notations in swara exercises are taught to the students after few months of training. These basic notations involve very few indications such as division between lagu and a dhrutam, denotes end of a tala cycle. A swara with a comma denotes the number of aksharakalas that follows a swara. 1 aksharakala, 2 aksharakalas, and so on. A swara with a dot on top denotes that the note is in higher octave. A swara with a dot below denotes that the note is in lower octave. These are the basic symbols that are used for notations at the initial level for beginners. Notations for advanced musical forms involve several technical symbols. This will be discussed in the upcoming sessions. Notations at advanced levels are just used to keep record of the song for future reference. Notations help to bring out an idea of the composition's structure. It is up to the musician's ability and awareness to guess the melody of the song through its notation. The ideas of the musician as well should be put in to bring out the actual form of the song. Notations will not be useful to people with inadequate raga and technical knowledge. Each raga assumes a unique form and differs with each composition. A composer frames the notation in his composition with his creativity imbibed. It is impossible to bring out the exact melody just by looking at the notations. Thus, in a highly developed melodic system of music, it will not be possible to represent in notation every refinement in rendering. Rendering is an art dependent upon artistry, power of interpretation and musical intelligence of the performer. However, retake. However perfect the system of notation devised, much will depend upon the correct interpretation of the symbols. The representation of subtle shrutis, ghana naya effects and the graces present a problem. With these limitations, accurate notations in Carnatic music are of immeasurable value. Though notations act as an important source of preserving Carnatic tradition, they have their own insignificance in Carnatic concerts. Hope this session has brought out the insignificant facet of notations in Carnatic music. Much more will be presented on this topic in the future sessions. Thank you.
Thank you.